biomass of diatom zooplankton fish fall to the ocean bed. So we are specifically looking for investors to organize demonstrations in the coastal waters and deep seas. Right now, we are selling new algae for use in small ponds and lakes. So we need to scale up to the oceans. And we need support from scientists to evaluate all aspects of the solution. And also we need some people, like consultants, advisors, incubators, who can help us reach the policymakers. The problem is everyone is aware of trees and forests, but very few people are aware of diatoms. The role of diatoms in water ecology to grow zooplankton, oysters, corals, whales, etc. So this is my contact information. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. The next team that will be presenting is carbon capture to end hunger, and that will be Jagadish.
Yeah, this is to capture carbon to end hunger. The main method of capturing is increased photosynthesis by increasing the enzymes involved in photosynthesis, the efficiency of enzymes involved in photosynthesis, mainly concentrating on the Kelvin cycle, and protein complexes, that is photophosphorylation in the photosynthetic machinery. We have developed two revolutionary products called Rubisco Act and Photon Max. Rubisco Act mainly increases the carbon capturing by minimizing the wasteful reactions that are taking place within the plant system, that is oxidative phosphorylation. And second, by increasing the life cycle of the Rubisco enzyme. If you see, the Rubisco constitute up to 50% of soluble fractions in the leaves. By reducing the protein amount, reducing the Rubisco content in the leaf, by increasing the efficiency, we can increase the nutrient uptake and functionality of these enzymes. Second, the Photon Max is to improve the solar radiation conversion from radiation to NADPH and ATP. These are the currencies, we call it as biochemical currencies, which are used in photosynthesis to fix carbon dioxide. Overall, in whatever the field trials we have carried out, we have seen maximum increment, biomass increment up to 75% in ideal conditions, 45% in moderate conditions, and 33% in worst conditions. The photos itself can talk about that, and we have seen increment. If you just consider about tomato per acre, we were able to capture approximately 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide in the form of fruits from 1 acre land in 4 months. That's the beauty of this technology. We have tried even in veggies, fruits, and many things. So these can, we can use this for feeding the people, and whatever the waste comes out of this can be used to generate value-added products like biochar, biofuel, syngas, which will have economical importance. When it comes to the perennial plants like areca nut, coconut, agroforestry, most of the carbon dioxide is sequestered in the form of cellulose and hemicellulose, which can be stored for years. We can say, depending upon the life of the plant, that portion which is stored has a carbon, I can say, sink, can go up to 100 years. If we take an example of coconut, and if you talk about areca nut, it will be more than 45 years. We are looking for business administration and investors too, and marketing and marketing management and digital marketing of this technology in overseas, I can say. This is our contact information. Thank you.
you. The next team to present is Healthy Soil Biomes Alliance, and we have Bruce Burnsworth presenting.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today. So my name is Bruce Burnsworth, and I am the founder of Healthy Soil Biomes. Just a second. Sorry. I'm the founder of Healthy Soil Biomes.cc, an alliance of top scientists, farmers, and soil saviors with years of boots on the ground experience. For billions of years, soil has been home to diverse microorganisms that have balanced carbon between the air and soil. However, conventional agricultural practices such as tillage, fertilizers, and fallow farmland have dramatically degraded 4.6 billion acres of farmland soil, preventing it from doing what nature intended, capturing carbon. The good news is the Center for Regenerative Ag and Resilient Systems at Cal State Chico has a solution to restore soil health. The method is 2 steps. First, build a Johnson-Su bioreactor, a no-turn compost vessel that takes a year to mature. The fungal dominant product is a high-quality inoculant applied with seeds, restoring much-needed microorganisms to the soil. Next, make the switch from conventional ag to regenerative, which requires both no-till and the planting of multi-species cover crops, allowing living soil to thrive year-round. Studies show that by converting just 25% of cropland to regenerative and soil biology approach, farmlands will draw down enough CO2 to offset 50% of current fossil fuel emissions. The early data is promising, and in order to validate our findings, we have raised millions of dollars and will be raising millions more for 5 flux tower sites. We'll monitor the amount of carbon that is net accrued in the soil. Additionally, we'll analyze the benefits of the regenerative, biologically focused approach, which include improved food nutrient density, water absorption, and farm economics. Using regenerative methods, we've seen impressive early results. 30 acres routinely captures 1 ton of CO2 per day. This includes sites in North Dakota, Missouri, and New Mexico, as well as Australia, Europe, and South America. Healthy Soil Biomes Alliance is taking CO2 out of the air and putting carbon deep into the soil, where it helps plants thrive. We need your help. Please join the movement.
Let's move on to food to G-tons. And we have Jim Stewart presenting on behalf of the team.
Okay, I'm Dr. Jim Stewart, and I'm representing Foods to Gigatons, which has a system in which we use aquatic foods ecosystems to capture and sequester carbon, and the food revenue more than pays for the installation and operation of our artificial reef systems. And we stock them with shellfish and seaweed, which naturally attract the fin fish. And then you have more fin fish and eggs, and soon you have a very profitable fishing spot. And then what we do is to sequester the carbon in the shellfish. And we've worked out the scientific formula here, and that when you have shellfish being formed in the midst of the seaweed, you get more carbon sequestered than is taken up by the respiration. The result is we have a total ecosystem sequestration in which we have a net CDR from the seaweed and shellfish sequestration of 4 gigatons. And then it turns out that, as Saba has reported, that the finfish themselves also poop and die. And so you've got CDR from that. And then the seaweed breaks off from your system and falls to the bottom of the ocean. And there's another couple of billion tons. So the total net CDR, just incidental to our production of food is 6 billion tons a year, all at zero cost, because the income from the aquatic foods equals $2 trillion. And this is just a part of the ocean foresters' total plan to reverse climate change. This is the upper left is the seafood shellfish system that I just described. And then in our peer-reviewed scientific paper, we've presented a comprehensive plan, including biocrude, trash, purpose-grown biomass, and everything. And then we even have a system whereby the alum cycle electricity that has 100% CO2 capture is stored in long-term bags, like lasting 1,000 years at the bottom of the ocean with no leakage. And we're looking for partnering with complementary teams and anybody who wants to work on any aspects of this system. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have, the next thing we have is YOUWAN method for CO2 removal, and that is going to be presented by Sloan Wang.
And today I want to introduce my technology. We call it YOUWAN method for CO2 removal. First, we can direct use resin to capture the CO2 and fix on the resin. Next, we can stabilize the CO2 in carbonate form. And we can sell the carbonate form and get a profit. This method basically is combining chromatography theory and water saving design. And if you use 1 liter resin to fix the CO2, we can treat about 200 cubic meter air. And we can concentrate it to about 2 liter concentrate. And we will get 0.3 carbon product like baking soda. So we can sell it and get profit. First, first way is direct CO2 capture. We can capture it by the resin and fix it on the resin. The good thing is CO2 operation range can be 0 to about 100%. It's okay. And the CO2 capture rate is over 99.9%. We can operate in the ground or in the air. It's okay. All kind of greenhouse we can capture. So after we capture the CO2 fixing on the resin, so we can regenerate by alkali and carbonate, and we feed in the downside, so we can separate by the resin and get the highest concentrate. So we can concentrate the carbonate CO2 from CO2, and the concentration is over 150 grams per liter. So we can crystallize this carbonate to become the carbon product and benefit from it. So we need to many engineers to help me like a chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, or air condition engineer, or carbon right application stuff, and so on. So this is my team name and my contact information. Thank you.
Sloan, if you want to maybe type in your contact information and your team name in the chat, then that could also help.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The next team is WALCORG TECNOLOGÍAS ALTERNATIVAS, Rafael Walter Contreras Ortega.
Yes. My name is Rafael Walter. I am the founder and CEO of WALCORG TECNOLOGÍAS ALTERNATIVAS. We are currently working in the creation of a token that is mined through carbon capture. We use open source photobioreactors to capture the CO2 through a connection to the CO2 source. The CO2 is processed with the photobioreactor. Currently, we are working on the third generation of this photobioreactor. You can see on the right side of the screen how the CO2 is sequestered. Okay, the CO2 is incorporated in the cellular structure of the microalgae. This origin the creation of biomass, and this biomass can be transformed into articles of greater added value. Skills and expertise we're looking for. Well, we're looking for full stack developers to develop the web page, blockchain developers, microbiologists, electronic engineers, embedded system engineers. Our team contact information, we have a email address. We have a social network, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Currently, our website, walcorg.com, is under development. Since we have to finish the platform, in the QR code that you can see on the right side of the screen, if you follow, you will find a white paper with a more detailed explanation about our currently stage of our technology and what we want to achieve. We want to create economies based on carbon sequestration. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rafael. The next team to present is going to be DAC City, and that's Valeria Andrus.
Okay, about DAC City. DAC City was founded by a team of seasoned technology firm pioneers and operates in the field of negative emission technology and direct air capture. We have a novel approach to removing CO2 from the air for consumer, commercial, and industrial use. And we already have active CO2 enrichment and capture projects in the works. Our core technology is built on decades of deployment of highly porous carbon composite ceramic monoliths and utilizes a proprietary method of surface activation plus formation and control of pore geometry to enhance absorption, desorption, working capacity, and the energetics of carbon dioxide capture. We're building an integrated system of pressurization, carbon dioxide sorption, and heat and energy management with a machine-based learning process for high system efficiency and performance. Our shipping container-sized carbon removal machine has broad application and is scalable from backyard to industrial use One of our goals is to be the first CO2 to greenhouse machine. Our existing XPRIZE team comes from mechanical and electrical engineering, process control and data science, and surface engineering, including surface chemistry and modeling. Our team bios are on the XPRIZE website. We're already talking with some potential partners, but it looks like we'll need multiple sequestration applications to build a sustainable path to removing a full gigaton of CO2 per year. So we're also looking to collaborate with other teams who have a sequestration solution and need a carbon removal partner. DAC City is a serious competitor with a solid team and a plan in place. If you have mad skills, DAC City is your team. And this is our contact and website info. And I will also put it in the chat. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie. Canadian Carbon with Aaron, whenever you're ready.
Right. So the solution that we've come up with is actually twofold. There is a sequestration portion to it afterwards, but this is the removal portion. There have been some interesting experiments done at Shinshu University in Japan, where they have successfully proved out that you can use a nano mesh of graphene and open up windows in order to create various different sized holes and use it to dynamically filter out various different molecules very selectively, different molecule sizes, different molecule types. So the idea is that we would create a filtration mesh of some sort using layered graphene and coordinated nano windows that will pull the carbon dioxide into its own chamber, filtering out other gases. And ideally, if we can capture hydrogen at the same time, that's fantastic, because it's part of the next phase in the process. So as stage 2, there was some other experiments, and I'm taking experiments from all over the place here because some really fascinating stuff's been done. At Waseda University in Japan, they came up with a method to convert carbon dioxide into methane at lower temperatures than previously in the past, which is exciting because it means that sequestration is fine, from one side, but there's a risk that, no matter how safe we say it is, no matter how long we say it's going to last and sit in the ground or sit underwater, ultimately it's going to come back. And when it does, it's going to be a massive problem, a bigger problem than it even is today, because we're going to have these massive containers full of CO2 that one day will leak out into the world again. So the goal here is to produce usable materials so that we're not actually putting it back in the ground. We're not running that risk of it being sequestered for a later problem. The next phase, which this is my favorite part of it, is that there's been some very interesting advancements being done on graphene production, especially single layer graphene sheets. And it ties back to the first part of the experiment, where we want to use single layer graphene in layers in order to capture the carbon dioxide. What's interesting about this is that carbon dioxide, by moving through the transformation into methane, this experiment using a highly polished copper plate at very specific electrical charges at very specific temperatures can cause carbon to tessellate into a hexagonal pattern, forming that single layer graphene mesh on top of the copper plate. What I'd like to do is, and what I'm looking for, really, the kind of help I'm looking for, is from engineers who can help me with the logistics of, how do you get a hyper polished, smooth copper plate to, practically pristine. And there's a lot of elements to this that I don't have the expertise in order to do. But I think what's interesting is you can get methane, and that methane can become graphene. It can be used as a fuel as methane, or it can become graphene, which has all sorts of different, different advantages. Using graphene, it conducts electricity 250 times better than silicon at room temperature. It's 200 times stronger than steel by weight. It's 1,000 times lighter than paper. It's 98% transparent. It's flexible. It can be used in screens. It can be used. There are so many wide applications, and the growth of the graphene industry is going to go up by so much that it's not just a cost-effective solution. It's also a highly profit-positive solution. If we can convert that carbon dioxide ultimately into graphene sheets, we're talking about something that can sustain itself indefinitely and ongoing, and without having to sequester the carbon dioxide underground. So that's the gist of it. I think the same thing could be applied to, once we have that filtration system in place, the same thing could be applied underwater as it is in the air. It's a similar process. And that's it. This is my contact here. I'm looking for scientists, engineers, research lab space, anybody who's out there who thinks this idea is fascinating like I do. Please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to collaborate with, especially actually Valerie, with somebody else who's also already got an existing solution of sequestration, or of removal rather. That's part of the puzzle already. And I think you're already talking about using carbon materials to do your removal. So there is some synergy there, using carbon to create carbon filtration so that we can get more carbon out of the air.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, our next team is going to be Carbon Capture Crown, and that is Derek.
Thank you. So I've heard a lot of really good ideas that are very similar to my ideas. One of them is to do aquaponic farming of duckweed, also known as Lemna minor, which is a vegan superfood. It grows extremely quickly and it's very good for carbon capture. My intention is to produce biofuels from this, such as bioethanol, biodiesel, and others, which will not only create a carbon sink as it grows, but will also produce a carbon negative, or at least carbon neutral fuel source. Duckweed grows extremely quickly and it can be grown alongside tilapia. So we have a viable vegan as well as animal protein symbiotic environment. This would require some aquaponic farming specialists. It could basically be done inside of a pool or a lake or anything with still water. This is nice, but I'm more interested in mass producing activated charcoal, or biochar, for carbon capture. This will store carbon dioxide gas indefinitely in the soil, and it will be a very good method for farming with. Activated charcoal, biochar, it's basically charcoal that is produced in a very efficient manner with a trash distiller, as I like to call it. You would pack it full of organic waste, such as sewage, farm waste, animal waste, rotten foods, vegetables, basically anything, even plastic could work for this. Oh, okay, perfect.
Let me see if this works.
Of course. Well, I can explain it, but essentially by mass producing, so this process, hydrospyrolysis, we could pack the distiller full of organic waste and we could heat it from the outside. And the gases that would come out of this in the distillation process, these gases could be condensed in water as pyrolysis oil, which is essentially the same as petroleum, to be refined into gasoline and diesel and other fuel products. So this is a carbon neutral form of gasoline, essentially. But what's important is that the biochar that's left when the process is completed, this can be ground up into a high surface area powder and used for farming, for a carbon sink agricultural system. And it would be great for terraforming deserts. They've done a lot of research on that. This really is, I believe, the most cost efficient method of carbon capture, just to mass produce charcoal, activated charcoal, biochar, grind it into a powder and use it as a high surface area carbon capture all over the planet. It also has properties for removing contaminants, petroleum, oil spills, chlorine, mercury, lead, aluminum, all sorts of toxins can be removed with charcoal, essentially. So I have a little design right here. You can kind of see it. This is something similar to what the distiller looks like. Basically, it's like a water distiller, just pack it full of organic waste. This is the pyrolysis oil. You can refine this into gasoline and diesel and jet fuel. So this is what the biochar looks like. We can mass produce this on an industrial scale or on a small scale. I can't quite see what that is. Oh, it's a charcoal for carbon capture. So there's a lot of research on this. I'm going to post a link as soon as my presentation's over so you can all kind of see what I'm talking about. This is a Stirling engine, which I would like to put on top of the distiller to receive 30% of the heat as electricity. So a portion of the heat put into the distiller could be retrieved as a heat source. So this is a Fresnel lens, which is basically a large magnifying glass. So we could use sunlight to power it directly. So we won't have to burn wood to heat the trash distiller, the bio distiller. So I would like to produce graphene oxide membranes as well for this. I believe that I could oxidize graphite using high purity hydrogen peroxide or acetic acid. There's a few methods for this, but I believe with a team of chemists, I should be able to crack it to efficiently produce graphene oxide membranes. And this would be great for capturing flue gas from factories as well as engine exhaust. So that's about it. It's a mass-produced duckweed and tilapia for carbon negative aquaponic farming for vegan and animal protein. This is what graphene oxide looks like that allows water to basically desalinate itself. You could pour ocean water through this and salt would get trapped, but water would go through. So activated charcoal mass produced through hydrous pyrolysis to produce biofuels as well as biochar, and the graphene oxide membranes produced by acid oxidation of graphite and using that to capture organic carbon gases directly at the source. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Next up, we have Arktide, and that is going to be Ben Salone presenting.
So Ben Salone with Arktide. We are an ocean-based team, and one of the problems that we have seen is that for a lot of ocean-based technologies is that you're either working in environmentally sensitive coastal areas or working off really expensive ships. So our primary focus is through mimicking natural processes of the oceans removing CO2 by building floating structures throughout the oceans. So the platforms themselves will float, obviously, be made out of geopolymers, and OTEC is a big part of this, bringing up nutrient-rich deep sea waters, which will both provide power for the platforms and, oh, I'm getting pop-ups, there we go. Provide power for the platforms and nutrients for sea life, for aquaculture. Undersea portions of the platform can support coral reefs and seaweed, fish habitats, and nutrients for plankton blooms. The platforms themselves will be very profitable waterfront real estate and be useful for everything from marina to housing to research facilities, aquaculture, dive facilities, everything. Let's see. So again, surface level, looking at all forms of sea life, we are, again, very, very focused on mimicking what nature does already as glaciers crash into the ocean and stir up deep sea water and allow life to bloom. We are in particular looking at ocean deserts and dead zones where river agriculture runoff through rivers has killed off a lot of sea life there. So mimicking a natural process, creating natural habitats, and allowing life to grow in abundance. The OTEC process itself is deep sea pipe, 40-degree temperature roughly down in the deep sea, and we can get 24/7 power generation. And again, have a totally clean source of power for all of these facilities. So not only will we be removing CO2, but our businesses, communities that are floating on these will be carbon neutral as well. The normal ocean cycle process, which I think is already covered a bit here, as a lot of teams are doing, when things die, they sink to the bottom of the ocean and carbon is sequestered there. We are looking at specifically growing and harvesting seaweed and using it as biochar off these platforms. So especially something like sargassum, which is floating and doesn't even need any kind of structure. There's about 10 million metric tons of that in the Sargasso Sea right now. A lot of it just washes up to shore and rots. So a lot of opportunity with what's already naturally there if we're on the water. So we're looking for folks who are specific on the marine biology side of things and on construction. Our team includes an architect and engineering firm in Germany and a few other folks. And so we're looking for somebody specific with marine biology knowledge. And also we plan to start building prototypes in about 2 months, probably start of the new year. So facilities and crew for that, which could be anywhere in the world, everywhere in the world. And ideally sea-based. So there's my contact info. You can find us on arktide.org, and love to chat with anyone interested. Thanks.
Couple more teams. We've got Team Takachar and we have Kevin Kung presenting. Whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you so much. So I represent Takachar, and in partnership with Sappi Organics, we're deploying a project that turns trash into cash. So most of the crop and forest residues, which we call biomass, has significant potential to be made into products that can either avoid or even remove carbon from the atmosphere. But a lot of the current processes are very large scale and centralized, which means that a lot of these biomass must first be collected before they can be converted. And this loose, wet, and bulky waste over long distance actually turns out to be very cost prohibitive. And as such, many rural communities will burn their residues and it's shut out from the supply chain. And in some cases, it's even exacerbated wildfires. So what we are doing is developing small-scale, low-cost portable systems that can latch onto the back of tractors and pickup trucks, and that can deploy to rural, hard-to-access regions to locally upgrade the residues into higher-value products on site without needing any external energy input. And our initial market that we're looking at is to make a biochar-based fertilizer scalable and economically in rural communities. To understand that, we are right now targeting around 1,000 smallholder farmers who have very degraded soils. And what we've been able to manage to show is that at the same price that they pay for their current chemical fertilizer inputs per hectare per season, we can increase their yields on average by 27% and net income by 50%. And the way this sequesters carbon into the soil is primarily land-based, where that biochar from the biomass, as we heard earlier, essentially is sequestered for hundreds of years into the ground. And we estimate that we can get around 700 kilogram per ton of carbon removed and double that for carbon avoided. We are looking for expertise in LCA, business development scaling, as well as people to help us manage various partnerships. So if you have any interest, you can come talk to us. Our email is trashiscash@mit.edu. And we also have info at Takachar. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. We have GreeneX next, and that's Karina. I'm glad we could fit you in despite the confusing time change issues. So whenever you're ready,
so
go ahead.
Thanks a lot for giving us a chance to
go
present.
ahead.
Okay, so our team, GreeneX, is a student team. We are based in Ukrainian industrial city, Kryvyi Rih. And our main proposal is to remove and sequester CO2 through the use of algae and other aquatic plants. Why did we decide to focus specifically on aquatic plants? So first of all, it's cheap and it's affordable technology for our region and for our place. And aquatic plants are great because they take a lot of CO2, and it's possible to move to a gigaton level in a year, and they're not so difficult to develop. So what is our proposed solution? CO2 is captured and by cultivated algae or other aquatic plants. So as a draft solution for this project, we were based on algae. However, other aquatic plants are also possible for this design because we focus on rivers and local reservoirs. So CO2 is absorbed by aquatic plants in specially created reservoirs or other designated areas. As for the waters that you can see in the pictures, wastewaters of settlements and livestock complexes will be used as a growing site, which contributes to sustainable resource use as wastewaters are used for carbon removal. Then, due to metabolic cycle, CO2 is absorbed by microalgae cell, and then valuable and easily processed parts of algae as fruits are removed and put to production, and difficult to process parts are put to sequestration. And this is our key technology that we proposed. We suggest to sequestrate parts of aquatic plants containing CO2 through pelletizing and extrusion. So a finely grounded mass of plant is dehydrated as much as possible, fastened and weighted with the minimum amount of clay. It's also possible to add low toxic waste, for example, plastic and organic matter, which also contributes to sustainable resource use. And then it's pressed to the size of small pellets and buried at the bottom of the same reservoir. With the reservoirs, it's possible to bury our pellets, our capsules, containing the sequestered CO2, and then as a sufficient amount of clay is applied, and thanks, and fertile soil layer is prepared for cremation. And this is our other key aspect, the complexity of solution and other environmental problems that it solves. So by this technology, not only we capture and sequestrate CO2, but also solve the disturbed plants problem and solve the problem of disturbed lands, which is vitally urgent for Ukraine, because we have Chernobyl, we have other disturbed and degraded lands, and that's why we decided to focus on this technology. We look for specialists working on genetically modified plants, because we need to develop special plants that will be able to cultivate in our local rivers and other reservoirs, and of course business developers to bring this project on a bigger scale. So here are the contracts. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Karina. That's all our teams for today. We do have breakout rooms for everybody that presented today.